Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Future Ready Leadership. My guest today, Mark Matson. He is an entrepreneur. He's the author of a book called Experiencing the American Dream: How to Invest Your Time, Energy, and Money to Create an Extraordinary Life. He's also the founder and CEO of Matson Money, which has around $11 billion assets under management. Mark, thank you for joining me.
Great to be here, Jacob.
So the theme of the American Dream is actually a very personal one for me, because I have immigrant parents. They came from the Republic of Georgia. They went from there to Italy, which is where they met. They moved to Australia, which is where I was born, and ultimately ended up in the United States. And that whole journey took place because my dad believed in the American dream. He grew up watching those old Westerns. He grew up watching movies about America, and he fell in love with the country so much so that he relocated his entire life and his family to come here. And he is the most grateful American who has never been, who's not born in America, that I've ever seen. He loves this country so much. And he's 4th of July, his favorite holiday. He's got the big flag up there. So he really, really believes in the American dream, as did I, or as do I. But today, a lot of people are questioning that. So before we talk about the concept of the American dream and what that looks like for you, why don't we take a step back and tell us a little bit about who you are? How did you get to where you are? What was your story like?
Yeah. Well, first of all, congratulations to your family for getting here. Arnold Schwarzenegger is a friend of mine, and also gave an endorsement for the book. He tells a very similar story coming from Austria, and wanting to escape. And it was the magazines and movies and things he was watching, and he's like, I really want to get to America. It's the promised land almost for people. My journey with the American dream started in Charleston, West Virginia. And I had, my dad was a great role model. By the time he was 10 years old, he was already an entrepreneur. 3 ways over, he sold newspapers in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. Then after he ran out of newspapers, he shined shoes for money. And then he also sold cloverine salve to the miners that came out of the coal mines. And there weren't a lot of options in West Virginia. Beautiful state, beautiful people, but not a lot of economic advantage. And still today, it's still very disadvantaged. So I had these two archetypes. My father, who believed in the American dream, that if you work hard, if you create value for other people, and no one owes you anything, and you're not entitled to anything, that you could create wealth and prosperity for you and your family, self-expression, freedom. And he, had a deep gratitude. My grandfather, on the other hand, I think he was in that second class that you talked about, Jacob, which was, he didn't like the American dream. In fact, I think he disdained it. He viewed it as materialism. He viewed it as greed. In fact, he told us the only way anyone ever gets money is to steal it from somebody else. He felt entitled to things he didn't earn. He lived a very meager, gray, unhealthy life, and he died a victim and resentful at the things he was never able to achieve. And so I had those very stark, different role models growing up, and that got me to thinking about, a lot of the people trapped in the Appalachia, they're not real chains, but they're mental and emotional, psychological chains that keep them, anchored to poverty. And today, it's not necessarily the people that are born into poverty that don't get it. They're millennials and Gen Zs and et cetera. They have massive wealth. They have massive opportunities. They have massive miracles through technology all around them, but they live as if they were working in the coal mines in West Virginia 100 years ago. So they don't see the opportunities because they're not trained to see it. They're not developed to see it.
Yeah, it's really interesting why that happens. But before we talk about the why don't we start with, what does the American dream mean? And then I'd love to dive into, why do we have, at least for you, I think your father, your grandfather had such different perspectives on the American dream, and why so many people have that different perspective today. What is it that keeps some people back, whereas other people can unlock that opportunity. But for you, when you think about the American dream, what does it even mean? How would you define it?
Well, I've thought deeply about this, and I define it in a way that's very different than many people. Uh, I think one of the reasons it gets a bad rap is because a lot of people think it is about greed and it is about materialism, and it's not about that for me. What it's about for me, there's two prongs of it. One is that it's about creativity. It's about self-expression. It's based on freedom. Freedom to create your own definition of happiness, freedom to pursue entrepreneurism, freedom to fulfill on your choice of religion, your choice of speech, your freedom of to own property, your freedom to create your own family. These are amazing, amazing things that we have in our country. And that's why so many people want to come here, because they don't exist in a lot of other countries. So that's part of it, the freedom and the self-expression and the love and the ability to live a fulfilling life based on your own definition of it. Goes right back to the founding fathers. But for me, it goes a step further. The American dream for me is a screen by which you see the world and your place in the world. Based on the screens you have in life, the world will appear in different ways. You don't really see the world. You don't even see the screen. It's a combination of education, training, experience, and it allows you to see things other people don't have. Think of it like this. If you're a doctor, you don't see the human body the way a non-doctor would see it. You have a whole language that you learned about it. And it's a screen by which you see the world that gives you power to take action. And I see that same thing as the American dream. If you study how the American dream works, you study how you can create value for others, and it's really two different paradigms. One is, on the American dream, is you have freedom, you have power, you can be responsible, you can take control, and you blame no one if you don't get the result. And you only get a result if you provide value for someone else. That's the foundational mindset. The people that hate the American dream, or the American dream critics, they view the world as fundamentally flawed and unfair, and that there are people that are victims, including many times themselves, and they're entitled to things that they didn't create, and they're vindictive that others have created it. And so they live in a world of jealousy and resentment and hate versus creativity, self-expression, and growth. And those are two completely different ways of seeing the world. And whether or not you're a victim or not in the world, living like one will never give you the American dream.
Yeah, very, very different perspectives. And I remember my dad would always echo that same thing, right? Like, nobody cares about your problems. I don't, right? I mean, it was never view yourself as a victim. Life's not fair. You just got to work hard, outwork, and just do what you need to do. But I'm really curious where these different perspectives came from. Because I remember, I think this was a few months ago, even last year, I had a conversation about something similar with somebody else, and then we put it up on YouTube. And then we got a lot of angry comments from people talking about the American dream, and people were saying, "Oh, it's easy for you to say, kids today can't afford a home, and Gen Z is screwed, and the pandemic this, and I'm being asked to work 50, 60 hours, and it's not the same world anymore." And people were just unloading, just like, you're a white guy and you don't know what it's like. And people were just going crazy on all like literally anything and everything could come my way. And these were people who didn't know my story, my background, where my family came from. They just made very quick judgments on kind of the surface level of what they saw. And it was very surprising and shocking to me to see that. And it really made me wonder, where does this come from? How is it that some people view that world as, to your point, kind of a victim? I'm a victim, the world owes me, and other people don't. And sometimes I wonder if coming from an immigrant family wasn't a huge asset for me, because none of that was put into my head. It was always, you're going to need to work harder than everybody else. You don't come from money. My parents grew up dirt poor, and they just had to work like psychopaths, right? They didn't speak my dad didn't speak English when he came to this country. He had to learn how to speak by watching the Johnny Carson and Merv Griffin shows.
Wow.
And so I would hear these stories growing up, and it was sort of just like, nobody's got time for your bullshit. No, just put in the time and effort, whatever you got to do. And I grew up watching my dad. He would wake up at like 4:30 every morning. He would commute an hour and a half to work. He would commute an hour and a half back. So he was gone from like 4:30 in the morning till like 7 o'clock every night. He worked like a crazy person. So I don't know what's going on in today's world. Why do we have such different perspectives?
Well, I think it's a little bit of an illusion that it's a new phenomena. I think it's always been around. When being born and having the first part of my childhood in West Virginia, my dad was literally, a lot of people don't know what real poverty is today. I mean, they got to really take a look around and look at history to see what the state of the world has been. My dad was born literally in a shack by the railroad, and they had one pair of shoes per year. They got right before school started. Then they outgrew them. Then they were barefoot all summer. They had meat one day a week, which was on Sunday. They had a chicken. Otherwise, it was beans and potatoes. It was so cold in the winter that the cold would come in through the cracks, and the rats would try to get in their house. And they had tried, not really a house, more of a shack. They had to take the tops off of instant carnation milk cans and nail it to the bottom of the baseboard. And the only heat source they had was a fireplace that was lined with the asbestos. I mean, this was horrific type of environment to grow up in. That's poverty. That is straight up poverty. There are people in the world starving, literally starving, children who don't have enough to eat. They're malnutrition. And, that's what it looks like. So I number one is I don't think a lot of people know what real poverty looks like. They've never seen it. I also think that there's a lot of money in getting people to believe that they're victims. Because if you can get people to believe that they're victims, that means they're helpless.
Yeah.
And if they're helpless, then they need you to save them. And if they need you to save them, then you will vote for them. And they can have power and control. And they can tax the people that make the money, say they're going to give it to the people that didn't make the money, which rarely happens. They usually use it for their own enrichment and their own projects. And then it just spins. You can never create anything powerful. The other thing, part of the American dream is, my dad taught me, as I bet yours did too, is that work is its own virtue. Yeah. When it would snow in Ohio, all the other kids would grab their sled. If we got off of school, they'd go out to the golf course and sleigh ride. My dad, before he left to work, gave me a snow shovel. I said, I want to go sleigh ride. And he said, no, you're going to all the neighbors and ask them if you can help, get their sidewalk and their driveway clear. And sometimes they pay me a couple bucks. Sometimes they wouldn't. They give me a cookie or some hot chocolate or something, But my dad said, look, hard work is a virtue. I call it freedom, fulfillment, and love in the book. The fulfillment to know that you did a great job. And to be able to look at that, whatever you built, whatever you created, whoever you helped, and to feel that internal fulfillment. And you can never create the American dream, and that's why some people struggle with it, from thinking about yourself. You have to think about other people. And if you help enough other people create their American dream, then you'll automatically get yours. And it's not about money. I know people want to make it about money. It's not about money, because money itself cannot make you happy. I've been around a lot of people with tons of money. And history is full of people, whether it's Elvis Presley, Marilyn Monroe, Howard Hughes, Prince. I mean, all these people, John Belushi, all these people had money, power, fame. And in the end, not only did it not help them, it destroyed them.
Yep.
So it's not about money. It's about helping other people and being of service. But I will say one more thing, is that it's easy to play a victim. Now, I hate the idea of victimhood and entitlement. I hate it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I find myself falling into it. And I really do. When I was in my early 30s, I was diagnosed with a disease called osteonecrosis. and that meant that the femurs in my in both of my legs were dying. And that in my 30s, they told me they were going to have to do surgery and cut me open and put in artificial hips. And I'm like, why is this happening to me? I can't believe this is happening. Why me? Why me? Why me? And then I was at a blood doctor's office, and there were 10 little kids. They were all hooked up to chemo, and they were playing with their cars and coloring books and, talking and playing as they were taking the chemo. And I thought, man, you are just self-absorbed asshole. Why not you? You're not guaranteed a life without pain and suffering. Look at those little kids over there. So I went from why me to why not me, and let's go on with my life, get the surgery, go on, be a good father, build your business, and stop feeling sorry for yourself. Because victimhood is juicy. You get to complain to people. You get to complain, that no one understands you. You get to be a martyr. You get to get people on your side. You get to gossip. You get to character assassinate. It's much harder to create than it is to tear down. And in today's social media world, so many people tear down.
If you've ever asked yourself what good AI can really accomplish, well, you're not alone. And in fact, by some estimates, over 80% of AI projects fail because of poor data. But here's some good news for you. When AI leverages the rich, authentic data of employee recognition, you get something truly unique. Human intelligence from WorkHuman, creators of the world's #1 recognition platform. Human intelligence drives good culture and engagement and unlocks insights into performance and skills. It also helps coach employees on what good peer-to-peer recognition looks like, turning every good job into better retention and well-being. And it helps surface feel-good stories that illustrate the best of your company culture. So, in reality, AI can accomplish a whole lot of good with the power of human intelligence. To learn how today's leading companies are turning AI into a force for good with human intelligence, go to workhuman.com. Again, that is workhuman.com. How do you balance, though, the idea of the kind of tough love, no victimhood with also empathy? Because to your point, there are also people who are going through tragedies. There are also people who are growing up in different circumstances. There are also people who are, maybe they have one parent instead of two. Like people go through difficult times. And so you want to have empathy for them, but at the same time, also not have that victimhood approach. So how do you balance those two things of don't be a victim, but also having empathy for what other people are going through?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So I'm always telling our coaches and our advisors to really get conscious that, and we talk about it in the book, that there is real suffering. I mean, there's divorce, there's drug addiction, there's rehab, there's cancer, there's losing your job, there's
all sorts of terrible stuff.
Yeah, unfortunately, people invest their money and they lose half of it overnight in like 2008 and 2009. But people are amazingly resilient, but they also can go through amazing dark periods in their life, full of pain and suffering. And I've been one of those people. I've gone through some very, very dark periods, and to those people, I say, it will eventually get better. And it's okay to feel that pain and that sorrow and reach out for help. Part of being a victim is not reaching out for help. If you take responsibility, you reach out for help for experts and people that understand the things you're going through that can help you get your way through it. But you just, and everyone's going to, like I said, everyone's going to feel like a victim from time to time. When I was 60 years old, I was diagnosed. But I can tell you, I've got a lot of artificial stuff in my body. I was diagnosed with something called my aorta had an aneurysm, and that's the main artery that comes off of your heart. And it was too big. It was 51 millimeters, and it needs to be like 40. It needs to be like 33. So if I didn't get it repaired, it would bust. So I had open heart surgery that cut me open. I was dead legally for 16 minutes. It was 6 months of just terrible suffering to get back. And I'm back to 100% now. But I'm really conscious that people go through suffering, but through that process, that 6 months, my purpose and my love for the American dream and helping people helped me go through that dark period and get to the other side. So it's and I think the other thing that we can do is that we can help charities, kids with brain cancer, children with cleft palates born in Africa. I mean, sex trafficking. There are so many things that we can help, and there are legitimate victims in the world. Most of them are children, and we should definitely help with that.
Yeah, there's some crazy things that are out there. Even I hear stories. We have some family friends, that are obviously, they're very successful. They have a lot of money, but sometimes, their kids are going through difficulties. And I think, wow, even Steve Jobs, right? All the money in the world. But when health goes, you realize what the priorities are in life. And so, yeah, those are all very valid points. Where do you think these two different paths come from? The victimhood path, the entitlement path, or the other path of opportunity? Because you alluded to this earlier, right? We live in crazy times, especially you got ChatGPT, you got all these technologies at your disposal that pretty much everyone has access to. You could build and create enormous value. So where are these different mindsets coming from?
I think they're taught. And sometimes they're generational. They're taught from one generation to the other. My grandfather tried to install this ideology into my father of victimhood and entitlement.
Yeah, how did he try to do that? Was it just talking about how?
Oh yeah. Arguments, fights, telling my dad, you're going to be doomed to live in, the hollers for the rest of your life.
Wow.
And then of course we communicate all kinds of messages by our own behavior to our children. Money was evil. Money was nasty. We don't talk about it. We're doomed to be here in the hollers forever. I always tell people that the American dream is only one generation from dying. And the reason is because you're not born with the American dream. The American dream has to be taught. And if we don't teach our children, our grandchildren, and the next generation about what the American dream really is and how to use it as a tool in their life, I'm not saying that, the American dream's out there. I'm saying that it's actually an actionable strategy that you can use in your life to create wealth. If I didn't have the screen of the American dream and what's possible here, I would have never started my own company. I would have never worked 7-day weeks, 10 hours a day, to get this thing going. I would have never risked my capital. I wouldn't be on this podcast. I wouldn't have raised $10 billion of assets. I wouldn't have 500 financial advisors. All the things that I've created, I created as a result of my screen about how incredible this country is and how anything's possible, and that I have the ability to create it if I'm willing to work hard, take risks, and be creative and serve other people. And so that's a screen. Without that screen, you are really in bad trouble, because you will create the screen that you have to prove yourself right. If you think you're a victim and you think you're entitled and you think you can't do it and you think, the man keeping you down, guess what? That's exactly what you're going to end up with in life. You're going to get because your brain's not going to sell yourself out and all of a sudden get super rich and help a ton of people, because your brain's already telling you it's not possible. And I think for the most part, we get that from two places: our parents. And then if we don't get it from our parents, then we get it from school. And if we don't get it from school, then we get it from the government or whatever news show we watch. And there are competing ideologies in the world. One's called capitalism, freedom, self-determination, entrepreneurism, and the other is socialism and communism. And we're getting really to the root cause. And if you believe in socialism and communism, you believe you're entitled to things that you didn't create in life, and that you're able to take them and confiscate them from the people that worked hard and did create it. And then you give all the power to the politicians, not the entrepreneurs. So you may not like Elon Musk. You may not want to buy a Tesla, and that's your right. In capitalism, the only people that get wealthy are the people that basically are voted on by the consumer to buy their product. But nobody forces you to buy an iPhone. No, nobody forces you to buy a Tesla. Well, now anyway. We did have an administration that was trying to force you to buy an electric car. But the clothes you wear, the house you live in, the jewelry you wear, the bike you ride, whatever car you drive. In capitalism, you're free to do whatever you want. In communism, you're not. In communism and socialism, the government, some bureaucrat decides who has wealth and prosperity. So if you fall into that trap and believe the politicians that tell you can't do it and you're doomed without us, then you really are doomed. And that's a sad thing to watch.
Yeah, my parents grew up in communism in Russia, so I don't know firsthand, but I heard a lot of stories from them around what that was like, and what happens if you disagree, you say the wrong thing, bad things happen to you. Part of me sometimes also wonders, in organizations, how do you...
Oh, this is good. I like where this is going. This is good.
Yeah, because most people who are listening and watching to this, they have a job at a company, right? And so sometimes I wonder if this mentality and approach goes inside of organizations as well. And, you can talk about DEI programs as well, but I'm also really concerned about things like well-being programs. And at least one of the questions that I ask a lot of CHROs is, how do you avoid becoming the new parent for your employees? Where when an employee shows up to work and you give them free food, you give them financial planning, you give them well-being, you give them a therapist, you give them coaching, you give them learning and development programs, you give them flexible work, it's almost like Pinocchio's island. And sometimes I wonder that what we're doing is we're taking away the accountability and responsibility from employees, being adults, being human beings in this world, teaching them how to manage their life. And when they show up to work, they say, hey, I'm lonely, I'm disengaged, I'm frustrated, solve my problems for me. And again, too, there's this balance of, well, you want to unlock the potential of your people. You want to take care of them. You want to help them become successful. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you also need to teach them that, hey, you're an adult and you have to be able to take care of things yourself too. And at least one of the things that I don't know if fearful is the right word, but one of the things that I'm paying attention to is if we're going too far with some of these initiatives where employees are just going to have a hard time surviving on their own. There were articles that came out that said Gen Z, for example, is the least resilient, the loneliest, the least prepared generation ever to enter the workforce. And by us creating all these programs, are we helping them or not? And so I'm curious to get your thoughts on that, of how this approach of victimhood, well-being. If you want to touch on DEI and get your thoughts on that too, how is all of this manifesting inside of the organization? Because I agree, parents, huge. Schools, huge. I went to the University of California, Santa Cruz, and which is one of the most liberal schools that are out there, right? And my dad to this day reminds me, and I studied economics and psychology, so nice. I was away from a lot of the very liberal components. But my dad to this day, he vividly remembers going to my graduation ceremony and the valedictorian was giving a speech. And my dad, he reminded me about this recently. He's like, do you remember the speech the valedictorian gave? I'm like, no. What'd she say? And he's like, she went up on stage and for 30 minutes, she was talking about how we needed to abolish all prisons in the world. I was like, I don't remember that at all. He's like, yes, that was the valedictorian speech. And again, it's not even about politics. It's just the frame of reference that different people have in schools, in parents, how they're raised, with organizations. So specifically in the business world, how does all of this make its way into the workplace?
Oh, that is great. I should probably write a book on that. That'd be a great book. So that's a lot to unpack, but I can tell you the way that we approach it. And it is a fine line between, okay, we're going to give you all these things. We're going to give you the 401k. We're going to give you a health savings plan. We're going to match the 401k. We're going to give you great health insurance. We're going to give you paid time off.
financial planning, well-being programs.
I mean, we love you, and we want you to have promoting the American dream. I always tell our employees that a big part of your employment here is your ability to own the American dream, and we care deeply about that. And as part of that, it's creating freedom, fulfillment, and loving your family. So I created a 2-day workshop and for advisors and their clients. And then we also have our employees go through that when we first hire them. And some of them love it, some of them don't. Some of them just want to be a victim. So I tell our employees that, number one, your job is not guaranteed here. You have to earn it every day. Number two is, as an entrepreneur, our company isn't guaranteed. I started this company 34 years ago, and I tell them we can't rest on anything we did over the last 34 years. We're only as valuable as our latest initiative and creating value for other people, and we must constantly be evolving. And when we don't, we deserve to go bankrupt if it ever comes to that, because we have to create value for people in the technological environment that exists today, not when I started the company 34 years ago. So you have to have a sense of urgency, a sense of creativity, a sense of passion, a sense of this is kind of a war. Capitalism is a war. You have all these different companies competing for consumers, competing for market share, competing for employees. And if you lose the war, you go under. You lose your company. So it takes some guts and courage and grit, determination, and I try to instill that into our employees. And then I tell them, none of you, that was said a slightly different way, that the way that I built our company is that I have the best people that I could possibly find for every single position. And I have found that if you want diversity and equity and inclusion, then that's the only rule you need to follow. If you hire the most competent people in the world that you can find, you are going to have all kinds of diversity in your company, because there are all kinds of diverse people with all kinds of diverse skills. And you don't have to force, somebody into a position because of their ethics or their values or their race or their gender or any of that stuff. So that what that allows is that each and every employee that I have knows that they're not there as some kind of token, that they're there that because they earned it, and they can have the pride to know that they were the absolute best that I could find. And then everybody on the team knows that we're a high performance team. It would be like a SEAL Team 6. They would never hire somebody based on anything other than competency and ability to get the job done. And if you build that into, for us anyways, if I've built that into the DNA of our organization, and that's what people have come to expect. And then when someone doesn't meet those standards, I get rid of them. I get rid of them fast as I can. And I always tell the team it's addition through subtraction. Sometimes, even if they're a high performer, if they're not a fit for the culture, and you see that in sports all the time. You see, divas and thing in school, prima donnas in sports, really talented, but they're just in trouble for the team. And a lot of times the coach will get rid of them. And I think that's a good model to have for building a company.
So are you a believer in like well-being programs and financial well-being and, on-site coaches and stuff like that? Or do you think, is there like a line that you would draw of how much you would give to employees?
Yeah, we tried a lot of those things, coaching and, stuff like that. But I think a little bit of coaching is good. A little training and development is good. I think I'm a big believer in training and education. So I'm always taking a stand for our clients to go, our employees rather, to go out. And if they'll say, hey, I want to take this class on programming, or hey, I'm in marketing and I want to take this marketing class, or hey, I'm in sales and I want to take this sales training class. We encourage them to do that. But I've been through stages where I think I have made the mistake of overly coddling them. And I think it's better. I mean, it's 61. I don't have time for that right now. I mean, I have 8 children, so I'm done with that. I'm over
8?
that. Yeah.
You have 8 kids?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm not even Catholic.
I have
And
2 kids, and I can't imagine 8.
I had 3, and then Melissa had 3. My wife, when we met almost 20 years ago, and then we had 2 of our own.
Wow.
They're still at home. So there's a lot of baseball and a lot of track and a lot of football going on in the Matson family. Um, but I do encourage them to do therapy and do counseling if they're going through a divorce or they're going through something hard. We give plenty of paid time off. We're not going to do it here at the office. You should go seek that out and take care of that, and we support you in that. But I think there is a danger of some of these companies, they had wine dispensers. I think Twitter had wine dispensers, and they had quiet pods where you could go and you can meditate, and they had ping pong tables, and they had, it was talk about coddling people. They probably could get a back rub on their break too. This is nuts. This is nuts. And if you need that kind of love, go get it after work, If you need a massage, go get it after work. We're not going to do it here.
I suspect I know you're going to answer to this. I know what you're going to say about this, but when it comes to being in the office, I suspect you're going to say, get into the office, don't stay at home.
You suspect.
I'm just guessing.
You suspect, right?
Yeah, I'm just guessing.
I've been coaching our internal people. First of all, we never closed down during COVID. We were deemed a necessary industry in the finance world, so we never closed down. We told people, if you feel like you're sick, stay home. Otherwise, get your butt to work. And we got through it just fine. But I think, Jacob, people have gotten soft since COVID. I think service has gone down. Productivity has gone down. People are weaker. They're not as energetic. They're not as like that killer instinct, that grit, that hard work, that determination. I see that as lacking out there. And I'm not sure we've really recovered as a society from that period of time. And then we had the period of time with, our previous administration, and that was a period of time of a lot of bizarre things that were really anti-American. So I think we're starting to come around from that. But we demand, unless there's something really, going on at home, you can't escape. Maybe you're sick or whatever. But we insist that our people are here in the office. Look, that's where you get all your creativity. That's where you get your supervision. That's where you get your camaraderie. That's where you get, look, a war is largely won. And if you're in capitalism, you're in a war for clients and customers, is won by the camaraderie and the morale and the coalition that you're building. You can't build a powerful coalition, I don't think, on Zoom. Now, we use it. We do workshops with thousands of people on it. But I think it has its limits.
Here's a good question for you. Who in your marketing department is a flight risk? How about, where are your talent or skills gaps? Or which employees make up your next generation of leaders? Or maybe, how do we build engagement? If you couldn't answer any of these, you need to check out Human Intelligence from WorkHuman. By combining AI with the rich data of their #1 rated employee recognition platform, WorkHuman's Human Intelligence unlocks insights and capabilities that redefine talent management, cultural transformation, and employee engagement. In short, it'll give you a good answer to some of HR's toughest questions. To learn how today's leading companies are turning AI into a force for good with human intelligence, go to workhuman.com. Again, that is workhuman.com. How do you change this mindset? So whether it's at work or in your personal life, how do you move away from the victimhood entitlement? And I guess you can kind of view this from two different lenses. One is if you personally find yourself going into that mindset, which we've all, I've fallen into that before too, and I have to take myself out of it. Or whether it's leaders of organizations who find that new employees that they're hiring might be falling into that mindset and they're trying to get them out of it without coddling them, without, you want to have sometimes that little bit of a tough love approach. How do you transition from one mindset to the other?
Well, I'll deal with the individual and your individual mindset or screen that I would say, and then I'll look at the company. So for me, I've noticed that when people or when I have changed my screen, it's usually because of severe pain and suffering. Yes, even pain and suffering has its place. So one of the most profound that I had was I was going through divorce in my 30s. I wasn't seeing my kids. I was afraid of what was going to happen with my business. I was afraid financially what was going to happen. And I was living in a residence inn as all the chaos was going down. And I was in there, and I had been an atheist my whole life. So I had a screen called No God. And then a buddy of mine who kept hammering me and saying, dude, no, you do believe in God. You are a Christian. I was like, stop saying that. I am not. I don't believe in God. I don't believe any of that crap. So then one day I was really upset. I was crying. I had him on the phone. He says, look around at those four walls in the hotel you're at. He said, that's you trying to run your own life. Are you done? I said, yeah, I'm done. I'm done. If this is my best work right here, then I'm not the guy that should be guiding this thing, because I drove it right into the cliff. He said, well, are you ready to say your first honest prayer of your life? And I said, yeah. He said, hit your knees. And all I did was pray for God to come into my life. So what I went from, I'm not trying to recruit here, guys, but I went from a world where there's no God in my mind, the screen that I had, to a world of God. And that changed everything. That changed how I interrelated with other people, myself. Eventually, I was able to meet my wife today. Then we've been together for almost 20 years now. And it changed, it made my world full and beautiful and fulfilling. But you can do that in any area. You can go from fast food, not working out, feeling disgusting, to getting up at 5 a.m, working out and getting a fitness trainer. That switch can switch. And I always tell people it's not who's in the gym on January 2nd. It's who's in the gym December 31st. You make this commitment, then you sell yourself out, and then you say, well, I didn't really want it anyway. And then you become a victim of your own commitment. And then you complain and bitch and moan about why you couldn't make it come true. And then you try to get people to feel sorry for you. So that's for employers to switch somebody's screen is very difficult. It's far better to and the other problem with being an entrepreneur is no matter what I've discovered is no matter how great your screening process is, you're not going to know until you know, because people are really great at hiding who they really are, what they really believe. So it might take you 6 months or a year to find out who you really hired, right? But once you find out, if you find out they're not a fit for your culture, they're not hardworking, they're not committed, they're not expressive, they're not creative. There's a study called the Bad Apple Study where they take 5 people in a group and give them a project, and they purposefully put one person in the group who's in on the test, and they're really negative and really, complaining, negative, sour, vindictive, and the team's productivity decreases by 80% when there's a bad apple right in there. So getting those people out of your company and doing it quickly, I'm not sure there's a way to switch them over. It's happened rarely in my business in 34 years with hundreds of different employees, maybe 1,000 different employees. It can happen, but I wouldn't bank on it.
Yeah, the mindset makes such a big difference. Even with my younger daughter right now, she's 8 years old, and she's learning how to play chess. And, she plays competitively. She goes in a lot of tournaments and stuff like that. And it's really interesting because when she's in a bad mood, like yesterday, she played, I think, 4 or 5 games online. And the first game, she was in a bad mood. She started the game and I could tell she was like upset. She was frustrated. She's like complaining about stuff, and she lost. And then she was getting ready to play the second game. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Before you start playing that second game, I want you to go take a few deep breaths. I want you to change your mindset before you play. Don't cry. Don't be whiny. Don't be upset. Go do what you need to do. Have a bite of a cookie. Just sit and calm down for a little bit before you play your next game. Think about your day, how good of a day you had. Think about the fun stuff you're doing this weekend. And so she went out of the room for like 5-10 minutes and she's like, okay, I'm ready to play now. And she sat down, she played 4 more games and won all 4.
Wow.
And I said, well, what did you learn from this? And she said, well, the way that I think is going to change whether I win or not. And I said, exactly. So same thing in the morning, like when you wake up and if you feel like you're having a bad day and you're cranky for breakfast or stuff like that, and you're not starting the day well, you need to do whatever you can to change your mindset for the day. Because if you show up to school like that, your friends aren't going to want to be around you. If you have a test, you're not going to do well. It just ruins your day. So the mindset that you have, I think there's also a lot of accountability just on us as individuals to identify the mindset that we're in and try to change it. I fall into that pattern all the time, right? I mean, sometimes, as a speaker, I write books, stuff like that. If I find, I didn't get this speaking gig, or, like beating myself up for it, I should do this differently. And you just kind of spiral in your mind about why you don't get certain opportunities. And then sometimes at night, if I can't fall asleep, I sit there and I think about, well, let's think about all the good things that I have. My kids are healthy. I love where we live. My family is nearby. And I go through all these good things that I have until I fall asleep. And it makes such a huge difference how you think and frame things, to your point, the screen that you have. And I guess, I'm trying to figure out if there is something that a leader can do to change the screen of their people. I mean, I guess maybe you can surround that person by people who have different screens. I don't know. I mean, on an individual level, there's stuff you can do, but I'm trying to think if there's something that somebody else can do for you to help you change the screen.
Well, I think definitely, as you said, the environment and the culture are conducive to one type of screen or another. And so that can lift people up. When I have seen people make the shift, it's because, number one, they've accepted that there are such things called screens. And those screens do determine how you see the world, and because they determine how you see the world, they determine your actions you're willing to take. Those actions will change your results in life. So the screen is critical. And if you can see that, then you can say, okay, from those 2 screens, I have the power to choose the one that's most powerful for my life. Then I have to look at the old screen and I have to see what I'm getting out of it. Well, I don't have to try as hard, or I get to blame other people, or I get to play God, or I get to be righteous, or I get to be condescending. I get to be selfish. I don't have to take risk. I don't have to have real conversations, because that old screen keeps you playing small. And subconsciously, there's a benefit for playing small called I don't have to take risk and put myself out in the world. And I don't have to risk getting rejected by people. My ideas, my videos, my sales call, my leadership, my whatever you're trying to create in life. And I think a lot of people spend most of their life trying to avoid getting rejected. And so it's easy on Facebook or Instagram to leave a snarky comment, but it's harder to go out the world and get a speaking engagement, like you said, in front of 3,000 people and share your ideas and your vision for the world and how you can help them. That's a whole different level, right? So seeing that there is a screen, that it does dictate the actions, and then seeing how it's actually hurting you in the world.
Yeah.
Seeing the benefits that you're getting are really not that great of a benefit, and that it's keeping you from, I'll give you a quick example. So when I first was an entrepreneur, I had a screen called Employees Suck. They're expensive, they're too much money, they don't follow directions, they're rude, they don't show up on time, so they suck and I might as well do it myself. And that was a screen. And for me, that actually showed up like that. Everybody I hired was a disaster. Everything blew up in my face. It was absolutely miserable. And then I noticed, I said, wait a minute, that has to be a screen. because there are some companies that have 10,000 employees. And they're obviously, these employees are doing something productive. So, if I'm going to create a company and save more people and help them have their American dream and invest properly, I'm going to have to grow my company. And it's and what was I getting out of it? I got to make them wrong. I got to be the one that was right. I got to complain to other people. I got to be the victim. I got to be entitled. And I had to change it. And what I changed it to was there are amazing, dedicated, committed, powerful employees out there, people that want an opportunity. So it's my job, number one, to find them, and number two, to create the culture that makes them want to stay and have a great career here. And now we have over 70 employees, 500 advisors that we work with, over 35,000 families that we work with. And none of that would have ever been possible if I had kept that one screen in place called Employees Suck. And we have thousands of screens. Most of them are subconscious. You don't know that you have them.
Yeah. Yeah, the screens are tough. One place where it's very clearly obvious is in political debates, right? Where, and I don't even know if it's not even a political thing. It's just some people, you can't even have conversations with a lot of people anymore, whether it's around politics, whether it's around business, whether it's around social issues. Some people have such, I don't know if you would call them just such strong screens that it's just not, if you challenge them, you just get attacked for whatever issue, for whatever reason that might be. And, I have some friends where I disagree with them politically, but we can have conversations.
Sure.
And we're good friends. We can have debate about that. What did you think here? What did you think there? And we're good. There are other people in my life where I know there is just no debate, no conversations, whether it's around politics or whether it's around a social issue, whether it's around whatever it might be. They're just so entrenched and ingrained in their way of thinking that there's just literally nothing you can do. And I try very hard not to be like that, but whether it's in your personal life or even at work, like I wrote an article on my Substack a little while ago where I said, when did saying work hard become a bad word? Like, right? What? And to your point, I do think a lot of things have gone soft. I've certainly noticed it during and post-pandemic where service has declined. I hear from a lot of CHROs that their general perception is that work ethic has gone down. People don't want to work as hard anymore. Like it's not that there's necessarily a big data set out there, but just the vibe, the perception, the feeling that people get, even when you go to a restaurant, even when you hire somebody to come to your house, it feels like things have just been deflated in some capacity. And I don't know, like I'm always trying to figure out, how do we change that mindset? How do we get back to the hard work, the American dream? It sounds like, according to you, you don't think the American dream is dead. You think it's alive and well. It's just covered by this false screen that so many people have.
I think the American dream is extremely robust. And just look at a couple of markers. If you talk to most people, they would tell you that, all big corporations control everything. Not true. 48% of all people are employed by a small business. That's almost half. That is pro-American dream. Like 75% of the Fortune 500 companies are either, the CEO is either an immigrant or the son or daughter of an immigrant. That's extremely pro-American dream. The quality of life that we have right now on this planet, if you went back just 500 years ago and you were the richest person on the planet, let's say the King of England, you didn't have penicillin. You could get a scratch on your knee and die. You didn't have anesthesia. If you needed surgery, which they didn't really have any surgery anyway, if you needed surgery, you were staying awake through it. You didn't have any air conditioning. You didn't have any artificial hips. You didn't have any heart transplants. You didn't have any movies to go to. You didn't have any internet. You didn't have a cell phone. You didn't have the quality of health the quality of life, the opportunities right now, this planet, this moment, this country are greater than any time in the existence of human beings on this planet. So if they can't be happy now, they're never gonna be happy. You can make $50,000 a year, a startup job, and live better than the King of England. I mean, it's mind-boggling to consider and think about. But we live in an age of miracles. Everybody should wake up every morning going, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it! I'm alive. This is incredible. Look at all the great things around me." And even if you're lazy, you can binge watch White Orchid or Lily or whatever the heck it's called.
White Lotus. Oh,
yeah, White Lotus. My wife's over there. She's laughing at me.
Season 3 was not good. Stay away from season 3, everybody. It's not worth your time.
She knows I mess it up every time. Or binge watch You or whatever you're binge watching at the time. I mean, there's so many opportunities. And for an entrepreneur, look, I know it's fun to graduate college and think you're going to start up as an entrepreneur making $500,000 a year, but I got a different strategy. Why not start at the bottom? I know it's not a popular idea, but there are so many entrepreneurs. And if you go to work, I always tell my kids, even if you have to go to work for free for somebody and just to prove that you're value to somebody, you be the hardest working, creative, dedicated employee in that company, you will get promoted and promoted because that entrepreneur is always looking for people to take their company into the future. And you will stand out because you won't be like the mindless drones that are in there just for a paycheck so they can go home and play 4 hours of video games and eat Grubhub. I mean, someone that wants to hustle and work hard, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you work inside of an entrepreneurial business, I would suggest working inside of an entrepreneurial-minded business that moves quickly, that innovates quickly, where there's a sense of urgency and creativity and passion, and don't work for a mindless, bureaucracy. Don't go to work for Nike, guys. Or Disney at this point,
Yeah.
Walt Disney would roll over in his grave if he knew what was going on at Disney.
What do you say, and we can end on this, what do you say to people who say, you know what, Mark, I did that and I got fired. I was the hardest working. I did put in the time and my company turned around and they fired me. So everything that you're saying is BS because people don't care about me. My company didn't care about me. I tried to give everything I could to this company and they turned around and just smacked me in the face. Why should I try again?
Well, that's a good question. Because maybe you went to work, this isn't PC, Jacob. Maybe you went to work for an asshole. There are jerks in the world, guys. Maybe, and there are narcissists. The odds are 1 out of every 20 people is a sociopath. A sociopath doesn't have empathy. They don't care. They view you as an object. You might go to work with one of those people, and they might just fire you on a whim. Who knows? But not everybody's a sociopath, and not everybody's a narcissist. And sometimes they have to fire you because guess what? 90% of the business models within their first 5 years go bankrupt. They don't make it. Business is very competitive. Providing value over time is tough. So yeah, there's ups, there's downs. My first job was cleaning dog kennels. Like literally, they're nasty because they have dog runs, and you know what dogs do after they're not eating. And you got to go in there clean. It's like 100 degrees out in Ohio, massive humidity, going through cleaning the dog runs and shoveling gravel. And I did have a good tan though, Jacob. Had a good tan. But it was miserable work. And you know what it taught me? It taught me I didn't want to clean dog runs for the rest of my life. So there's something that you can take away from each and every one of those experiences. And it'll help you grow and evolve. But hard work in the end, and you might discover by working through somebody that you do want to have your own company. And you think maybe being your own boss will be an easier way. I tell you it won't. Because now I've got over 5,000 families we work with. I'm actually, they're my boss telling me what to do. And as an entrepreneur, if you think all you get to do is show up for an hour a day and then go to the beach and hang out in Cabo all the time, that's not the deal. 85% of what I do, I'd really not like to be doing, except the fact that I'm the CEO, and when there's really, really hard, difficult problems to solve, I'm the only one that can solve them. So you end up doing a lot as a CEO and owning a business that you don't want to do, but this part, the 20, maybe 15 to 20% you love, like doing a podcast like this, that makes all the rest of it worth it.
I love it. Mark, why don't you let people know where can they go to learn more about you, grab your book, anything you want to mention for people to check out?
Yeah, thanks, Jacob. Yeah, you can grab a copy of the book on Amazon. It is the sixth time to brag a little bit, a little selfless presentation here, self-serving rather. Look, you can get it. It's called Experiencing the American Dream. It's a 6-time national bestseller. If you want to learn more about the company, it's matsonmoney.com. And if you want to get the audio version, if you don't read, the audio version is on Audible and a lot of other sources too. I wrote it for families and for people that want to say, okay, how do I invest my time? How do I invest my energy? And there's a massive section on the academics of how you invest your portfolio to fulfilling your American dream. So we really would love more people to get it in their hands and email me, tell me what you think about it.
Mark, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I really appreciate it. And I hope everyone checks out the book, and thanks everyone for tuning in and for listening. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Future Ready Leadership. If you want to get access to more content on how you can become future ready, make sure to subscribe to the newsletter. It's thefutureorganization.com/newsletter. And if you enjoyed this episode, please send it to somebody who you would like to see become a better leader. Thanks for listening or watching, and I will see you next time.